Next up, Parks and Rec.
Welcome on board, by the way.
Thank you very much.
Glad you're here. I'm really excited.
I'm very excited.
Hey, Joe. I'm sorry, Sarah. I am. You sticking around to cheer us on? No, how are you?
You don't need us to cheer. I have a report to get in by 5 o'clock.
Hey, Councilman.
So I got to get back to the office.
Oh, you're forgiven.
You're in the middle. How are you?
Yes, Council Lady.
I forgot. I hope Streets Department is listening, because I have asked Qasim Ali to work for me. He's been with the city around, I don't know, probably around 30 years, probably almost as long as I have. But I want to say to Commissioner Williams, to everybody, to the Deputy Commissioner, and when it comes to Qasim Alim, you all need to make him permanent. The man does a wonderful job. Make him permanent.
30 years.
Thank you, Mr. President.
All right. I'm sure they heard you. If they didn't hear you just now, somebody's going to tell them. Thank you, Council Lady. Parks and Rec. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Please
Good
proceed.
afternoon, Council President Clark and members of Council. My name is Catherine Outlevel. I'm the Commissioner of Parks and Recreation. With me today are Aparna Palantino, Deputy Commissioner for Capital Infrastructure and Natural Lands, and Marissa Washington, Deputy Commissioner for Administration. It is our pleasure to be here today. I appear before you today to present our proposed operating budget for fiscal year 2018, which includes a general fund obligation of $61,156,041 and grants revenue of $12,531,554. The FY18 general fund budget reflects an increase of $903,547 over FY17 estimated obligations. The Class 100 request of $46,660,211 sustains the department's authorized level of 743 general fund full-time positions. $9,294,525 proposed for Class 200, and $2,673,805 in Class 300, 400, and $2,527,500 in Class 500. I would like to begin my comments by thanking the staff at Philadelphia Parks and Recreation, many of who are with us here today, for their extraordinary dedication to the department, our assets and programs, and to the constituents we serve each day. The men and women serving Philadelphia Parks and Recreation represent various backgrounds and diversities. The Parks and Recreation executive team are 80% women, 20% men, 20% African American, 40% white, 20% Latino, and 20% Asian. The full-time new hire breakdown for FY17 was 43% female, 57% male, 43% minority, 57% white, and 7% bilingual. Our plans for FY18 include implementing Parks and Recreation's first strategic plan as a merged department. Implementing this new plan will not only strengthen the department's ability to operate as a single and aligned entity, but will position it to more effectively serve and continuously engage communities across the entire city. It will help build stronger relationships between the Parks and Recreation system and Philadelphians for years to come. In FY18, the department will continue to build on its youth workforce efforts and take on a leadership role in the design and implementation of the city as a model employer strategy by way of our new Career Advancement Project, a 24-month career exposure program designed to connect young adults and underemployed individuals to permanent careers. CAP will support innovative pre-apprenticeship career pathways and expose individuals to natural resource management, health and wellness, and community engagement fields. We will engage 40 participants in the first year of this program, targeting individuals who have held seasonal positions within our department. Other new initiatives and projects for the department in FY18 include the completion of the Love Park renovation, the opening of the Reading Viaduct Rail Park, the opening of the City of Philadelphia's first zipline and ropes adventure course in West Fairmount Park, the hosting of our second annual Philadelphia International Unity Cup, which celebrates the city's diversity through the game of soccer, and offering a unique opportunity for hundreds of children to experience overnight summer camp in the Poconos through a new program called Camp Philly. The department will continue to support the Rebuild Initiative, working hand in hand with the Rebuild team to address critical capital issues at our sites and to reimagine how our facilities can best meet the needs and interests of our constituents. We will continue engaging community members in every neighborhood of Philadelphia and building the capacity of the volunteers serving in our hundreds of registered Park Friends groups and Recreation Advisory Councils. Lastly, we will put the needs of citizens first, and we will work to provide optimal service and a rewarding and meaningful experience for each and every Parks and Recreation user. I want to thank the Parks and Recreation Commission members, many of us who are here with us today. I also want to thank each of you for your tireless efforts on behalf of your constituents and your care, concern, and support for Parks and Recreation facilities in your district and throughout the city. Should any council member wish to engage in further discussion on any of these matters, my staff and I are available to meet with you at your convenience. Thank you for this opportunity to discuss our department with you today, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, and good afternoon. A couple of questions. Last year during the operating budget, council amended the budget to include appropriations for 40 employees. And I'm assuming that's based on the rebuild revenue. Can you tell me where we are with that? Although we've talked about a whole lot of different things relating to rebuild, there's really not been any conversation about those 40 employees that would actually do, I guess, minimal capital or maintenance work to facilities. Can you tell me where we are with that process?
Sure. So when we found out that we received that extra allocation, we began the hiring process for those individuals, and we did hire 12 of the 40 individuals, and then we put a hold on the hiring process when we learned that the revenue was connected to the Philadelphia beverage tax. And so as soon as that is resolved, we hope to pick the hiring back up and fill all of those slots.
We expect to meet our 40-person.
Correct,
goal.
yes.
So how, I mean, I know there were some conversations during the discussion about how it would be structured. They were talking about hiring maybe 2 or 3 individuals who were journeymen or retired construction individuals that would be supervisors. I mean, out of that 12, where are we at with the 12?
Sure. So our plan, our plan for the positions was to actually create a special project capital team. As you know, we've had a special projects program that our skilled trades team has been working on for about 3 years. It's been incredibly successful. We've done about 100 capital projects using this, the existing skilled trades team. And so it was our hope through this, with this new funding, to create a sort of dedicated capital squad of these 40 individuals that would be made up of folks in each of those trades with a sort of a group leader in charge of those, and the superintendent who would oversee the special capital projects. What we found was, throughout the initial 3 years of doing the special capital projects, while they were incredibly successful, saved time and money, well utilized by district council people, it did put a strain on our ability to respond to maintenance requests, and that, coupled with the new institution of the Performo work management system, we have a higher need to be accountable and to complete work orders on time. So with Frank Fabi's direction and advice, along with Aperna, we decided that a good use of a good structure that we would create would be to create this special capital squad, which is still what we hope to do. The 12 individuals that we hired are working on the existing skilled trade staff, so it has given us a good infusion of additional support right now for our skilled trade staff, but it is our hope to eventually fill those 40 positions and to be able to do those special capital projects alongside the rebuild team. So hopefully some of the rebuild projects that might be things that can be fulfilled by our skilled trades, that those guys would be able to do those projects.
All right, so of the 12, are they individuals that are certified in those particular disciplines? I mean, are we hiring individuals that are currently carpenters or
We
plumbers?
are, yeah. They have to come in. There's specifications for the job, which I can share for you, but they have to come in with a level of experience for that position.
All right. Of that 12, what's the racial breakdown of that 12?
I believe it's 30% people of color. I can give you the exact racial breakdown, but we actually have one female too, which is a big deal for us because we don't have too many women in our skilled trades. Hang on one second, I have the number. Do you have it? So we have, of the 12 positions, 8% female, which is 1, 11% men, which is 92%, 4 African American, 33%, 7 Caucasian at 58%, and 1 Latino at 8%.
So 30% minority.
Yeah, it's actually, if I'm reading this, it's actually 40% minority,
What is it?
people of color. 40%,
40.
yeah,
All right.
of the 12. And that's on par with what our skilled trades are overall.
That's what I was gonna
If we're
ask you
about 30,
currently.
32% in our diversity of our skilled trades, people of color.
All right, because when we recommended that strategy, we always believed that the percentages as it relates to reflecting the demographics of the city would be higher if we hired city employees. And those city employees are required to live in the city of Philadelphia.
Correct.
All right. What's the other one? I need to ask you about civil service changes. During the course of the conversation, this actually goes back some time, when we had these individuals that were provisionals, volunteers, people that basically worked at the rec centers, in some cases more than the actual rec leader. And there was always a conversation about a path towards getting those people in some civil service capacity. Had that been followed through in terms of changing some of the requirements or giving some credit,
Yeah.
time served to, I hate to use the term time served, that's giving some credits associated with the activities of those individuals?
It has. There have been a couple of things that we've done. The first thing was that we changed the spec for the GMW, the grounds maintenance worker position, so that you had to have a certain amount of hours, I believe it's 40 hours of training, and if you had worked as an SMA, a seasonal maintenance attendant, or had gone through our training program through the department, which our seasonals would have done that, then that was a requirement for the position. So we just actually posted that position, and we had about 1,000 people who applied for the position. I think we ended up having about 600 or so take the test, and I think about 100 people on the eligibility list, and we're seeing a high number of them coming from our seasonal workforce, so we were really happy about that. The other thing we did was a very robust recruitment effort towards our rec leader trainee position. We were realizing, that our program staff, the RSI, the SMAs have a pathway now, but the RSIs, which is the recreational specialty instructor, those are the seasonal positions on the program side. It's a little more challenging for us to bring them through on the program side, and so through our recreation leader trainee position, we did a pretty robust recruiting effort where we solicited all of our program staff and said, give us prospects, people that we can actively recruit for this position coming from seasonals that you've worked with. So lifeguards that you've worked with, or after school counselors that you've worked with who are great and who meet the qualifications for this position. And what we found was that through that effort, that we were able to increase the diversity of our rec leader trainee eligibility list by 50%. Through that effort. So we're going to continue to do that recruitment effort. It's a big lift for us because we don't have a tremendous amount of capacity, but we're trying to build our capacity to be able to actively recruit from within our system and make people aware of the pathways that are available. And then the third thing is the program I mentioned in my opening remarks is the Career Advancement Project, and that is going to be these 40 positions that we're actually going to bring on for 24 months, 4 days of work and then 1 day of soft skills training, and we now have a full-time person who is going to be working with these individuals in terms of making sure that we have the mentors in place, making sure that we have the soft skill training, connecting them to other educational opportunities, and really being a caseworker for them. And then the idea is that once they come through that 24-month CAP program, that they would move right into a civil service position. And we are targeting for that program individuals who are existing seasonals with us.
Okay. One last question, because I know my time is up. Real quick. There's this conversation about the rebuild program and the potential end users and the capability of the end user subleasing, possibly selling off facilities. And I was approached today by an individual who represents the workforce, i.e. the union, the existing workforce in the Parks and Recs. I think most of them are District Council 33.
Some, we have 43 and 47.
33 and 47.
Yes.
So in the event, and you may not be able to answer this question, or maybe my good friends over in the corner maybe answer this question. In the event that happens, which, I'm not going to say it's unlikely, but in the event that somehow a facility gets sold, who would be the workforce in those facilities?
Yeah, that's not something I can answer. So Brian will come up.
Thank you, Council President. Brian Abernathy, Deputy Managing Director. As you mentioned, I think to clarify, the entire asset is not required to be sold or optioned. It's only the improvement. So just to clarify what we're talking about.
When you say required, I'm not asking about required. I'm saying
should it happen?
It's allowed.
Sure. If it happened, the city would still maintain those sites and operate those sites.
They would maintain
and operate the recreation centers.
Even if it's sold to a private source?
Yes.
Is that in the legislation?
If it's not, it should be.
Okay. I'm good. All right, thank you. Chair recognizes Councilman Jones. And I want to make clear, I'm not good that this facility should be sold. I'm good with your response. Thank you.
So, Mr. President, I'm going to save all my rebuild questions for another day and another hearing. What I'd like to say, first of all and foremost, is thank you to you and your staff for being so responsive to the needs of my constituents.
We're testing.
And I'm done.
We had to get a new clock. I'm sorry, Councilman.
You're welcome.
And thank you for including the new members of your civilian auxiliary there that work so hard to be advocates for Parks and Rec, and we appreciate their efforts as well. My all-time favorite, I really care about you guys, but Frank Favy is my hero, and he is. He comes through and sometimes patches problems together with bubble gum and chicken wire, but it gets done, and I really appreciate that on behalf of the kids. Couple of questions. Golf courses. I have 3 in my district. I know Councilman Johnson has one. Maria has one as well, and a driving range across the street from you. That's mine, but it's yours. Listen, he pays for it. So what I want to know is, when is the lease coming up? And when I hope you will consider input from council members about some of the design of those leases. And so when is the lease coming up? Let's start with that.
Yeah, I don't have that information in front of me. I can get that to you.
So I believe it's 18.
I can, yeah.
Is it 18?
Yeah.
It runs through 2018. The lease for 4 of the courses, the 2 that are operated as nonprofits, are on a 5-year lease.
Come on.
Gotta say
Just save your name for the record. Why don't you come up?
Thanks, Barry.
Barry Bessler, Director of Compliance and Policy. The current contract with Billy Casper Golf for 4 of our municipal golf courses ends at December 31st, 2018.
And while you're up here, there was a financial contribution proposed to Cobb's Creek. Does anyone know the status of those improvements?
Sure, I do. We're still in conversations with that group around what the opportunity might be at Cobb's Creek, and I'm happy to come in and bring you into those conversations.
I would like us to dream bigger.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah, no, you're right. I'm sorry. I was going to say,
Yeah, we're still
we
in.
share those. And what I'd like to do is try to challenge us to dream bigger. Those are our assets that obviously the private sector realizes are both historic and valuable, and that we possibly can do some bigger things with them. To get caught into a 5-year lease with folk that are, at times I'm not going to call them marginal, but they're not big dreamers and not big investors, is something that I'd like us to go to a greater height. So we can put a pin in that and go with that. I believe it was me and the Chair of Parks and Recs that put in a resolution about phone connectivity in the park. Valley Green and other areas around the Philadelphia Park system are not connected to phones. So if you're riding your bike or riding your horse or walking and sprain your ankle, or worse, are accosted by someone, there's no way, if they take your phone, to do that. So what we've asked you to be a part of that hearing, not so much for you to provide the answers, but the Verizons, Comcast, AT&Ts of the world, to give us a system that at least allows for folk to enjoy the wilderness, but not be in the wilderness disconnected.
We completely understand the concern, we share that concern, and we're very open to being a part of any of those conversations and helping to figure out how we can improve the situation.
Okay. Permitting. I need to get a better sense of that. There's a greater demand from the suburbs for our parks and rec. Now they realize what treasures that we do have. And what I want to do is make sure that we maintain a balance of Philadelphians as well as people that want to come from outside the city to enjoy it. I had an opportunity to ride down 33rd and, 33rd and Berks, out by you, near Mander, up that way.
Yes.
And it was on a Sunday, and I don't think I saw one kid from the neighborhood taking advantage of that park. And I want us to welcome outsiders and as much participation of open space as dictated by the founders of the park. But I also want the kid across the street to feel welcome in the park and be a part of it. So the permitting of the baseball fields, football fields, how does that work?
Yeah, so it's very challenging, as you described, because of the amount of demand that there is. As more children and families have moved into the Center City area, where there is not a lot of opportunity for fields, and we've seen youth programs grow within not just the Center City area, but I would say the perimeter neighborhoods of Center City. It has been a challenge to, as those youth programs grow, to find space in Center City proper in those immediate neighborhoods, and so sometimes those groups do. Those youth programs do move to some of the East and West Fairmont Park field areas. What we do is we take requests as they come in. We certainly want to give priority to the immediate neighborhood, and on many of our fields, those neighborhood groups have been using those fields for many years, and we respect that. We do have, a first right of refusal. If a group has been using a field for years, a youth group. Youth always trumps, we try to have a policy that youth groups always trump adult groups, but if a youth group has been using a field for a long time, we try to give them that opportunity to continue using that field. If we ever do get a request where a community group does not have access to that field, we do our very, very best to work one-on-one with that group to make sure that if we can't place them at that field, we place them at a field in a very nearby location. But you are correct. I think youth sports and organized youth sports have exploded over the last 10 years, and we still have the same number of fields and fewer fields because they're not all in as good a condition as some of the ones perhaps in East and West Fairmont Park. So we struggle with that. We also struggle because, to be honest, there's a lot of charter schools that are moving into buildings that are formal industrial spaces or former supermarkets or former elementary schools that don't have fields. And, we permitted, I think, about 8,000 hours for charter schools. Last year alone, 40 different charter schools to use our fields. We didn't have that 10 years ago, and so that creates more pressure on fields. And some of them are not from the immediate neighborhoods. The charter schools will often go wherever they can get on the field. So there's an incredible amount of pressure, and I think, again, through the Rebuild Initiative, we have to really think about how we can create more equity in terms of where we make fields better and have enough fields for everybody to use them.
So if you have a really popular field, and I'm going to end on this, where you have multiple requests, my suggestion is, would you provide to the president, so you can provide the members, the last 5 years of participation on our fields and let's get a breakdown of where they're from. And I want Center City after work leagues to enjoy all of our fields, but I also want the bad news bears of the communities to also be able to get some practice time, some playing time. So if you could give us a report that chronicles that, and then a possible solution might be a lottery. Like if you had it over the last 5 years, all right, you might want to take 5 years is a long time. So, and some
We'd be
of them,
happy to get that to you.
all right, and I
Absolutely.
appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And can you go back 10 years? Because
10 years?
The folks over at 33rd Street are already gone and have been gone for quite some time, the fields that the councilman has
Sure, we'll
referenced.
go back as far as
So
we,
they
as far as we
might not
can,
be covered
absolutely.
in the last 10.
That's what I'm at.
Thank you. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Bass.
Thank you, Mr. President.
You're welcome, Council Lady.
Good afternoon.
Hello.
How are you?
Good, how are you?
I just want to start by saying it's such a pleasure to work with you all. Parks and Rec, as a chair of Parks and Recreation, it really is just an honor to work with such professionals and to have folks that you can really always come to agreement with in some way or another. In terms of when we're trying to get something done, when we're working to get something done. And I really shouldn't call out names in Park and Recreation, but I have to, just acknowledge a couple of people. Of course, you ladies, and you've just been, like I said, a joy to work with. But I also wanted to acknowledge Frank Faby, who is, everybody loves Frank. It's like a TV show. Everybody loves Frank. And also Stephanie Craighead, and Ken. Is Ken here?
Oh, Ken, thank you.
Ken's back
Ken
working
Shepherd.
on activity fund grants.
I'll take it for you.
You'll take it for Ken. Okay, all right, thank you. And really your entire crew, and certainly the Parks and Recreation Commission for all of their hard work and volunteer hours, because they are unpaid public servants, and we have a lot of expectations and requests of them. And so I just really want to start by thanking all of them. And also, as we talk about fields, we had the pleasure just recently of throwing out the first pitch at Mount Airy Baseball, and I have to, Councilman Jones. I'll teach you how to do it one day. But it was quite an interesting morning with children that like little ones, that toddlers that we were trying to get to throw out the pitch with us, and it didn't always work out so well. But I was just astonished in terms of the amount of use at that field. And it's a field I go by on a regular basis, and I've been there before. But it seemed as if on this day there was an explosion, a baseball explosion, and it was a good thing. And there were kids from all over. From different neighborhoods. There were about 4 different leagues, it looked like, going on all at the same time. And I just marveled at the amount of coordination that really requires to make sure, I guess nobody's hitting a grand slam home run, but if somebody hit, a ball, you could easily end up in someone else's field or in someone else's game. So I don't know how that is all coordinated, but I have to just say Parks and Rec just does an amazing job at making sure that everyone has the opportunity to participate in all of these activities. So again, kudos to you. A couple of things I just wanted to ask, and I had some rebuild questions, of course, but I'm actually going to save them for the rebuild hearing, although I don't, as the council president mentioned earlier about the sale of the improvements and who the employees would be. I just really don't understand how someone else could own a building and yet the city of Philadelphia is required to staff it or expected to staff it. It just really doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But like I said, I'm going to leave those questions for the actual rebuild hearing. A couple of questions, just following up on previous initiatives. And so in 2013, we had an initiative. All of the district members of council had agreed that we would support funding for cameras out of our capital dollars. And I just wanted to get an update. Are all of our rec centers done? They were supposed to be done over a 3-year period, which means really they should be done by now. And they were not just the cameras, but they were also the anti-loitering devices.
Aparna Palantino, Deputy Commissioner. So, Councilman, I'd like to speak to the status. I'd like to speak to the status of that initiative. We have continued to implement cameras, and it's taken a sort of a broader approach since it was originally introduced. We were going to address a certain number of sites every year, but we've actually switched the approach a little bit in concert with some of the council members' requests to add them when we do major capital projects.
Okay.
So they've, rather than allocate funding separately to camera projects, they've brought it into their renovation projects.
Okay.
So currently we have about 90 sites completed at about 1,000 cameras installed.
Okay.
With another 131 scheduled to go in within the next 6 months.
Okay.
And then we'll continue as sites are being renovated.
Okay. So do you have a schedule for when that's expected to be, or?
I don't have an exact schedule for when every site will have a camera based on the renovations that will take
Sure.
place.
And we want to do
yeah.
it with the renovations because we want something that makes sense.
Absolutely,
And it makes
exactly.
sense to do it. It doesn't
Right.
make sense to put cameras in and then we know a renovation is going to be
Exactly.
happening in the next year or 2 years. So do it all at the same time.
Right.
But I do want to be cognizant of the fact that we publicly announced that cameras will be in every rec center within
Yes.
3 years. So in the instance where there's not, it would be, I think, helpful or even much more important to let the community know that cameras are coming and an anticipated date when the cameras will be in. So if folks were expecting that cameras would be in by 2016 and certainly 2017 at the latest, and they're not, and they're scheduled, let's say in 2018 or 2019, then I think that's information we need to provide to the public in some way, shape, or form.
Certainly.
In those neighborhoods around that rec center, maybe a public posting at that site, or something of that sort, to let folks know that they're working with the district council, you're working with the district council person to make sure that the cameras are going to be in. And also the anti-loitering devices, is those same status?
Yes, so those, of course, are restricted to areas where there's not immediate residents nearby because they do have a range of 60 feet, so they can be disruptive to residents in neighboring houses. So we carefully select the sites where we can put them. If possible, we install them. If it's not possible, we can't.
Can you inform the district council members if they're not going to be installed?
Yes.
Because again, that's something else that we collectively agree to fund. And if it's not going to go in, I certainly have the expectation that at every site, there's also going to be this anti-loitering device. And if it's not going in, then, we
Sure.
should probably be made aware.
Certainly.
Okay, all right, I'll come back around. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Chair recognizes Councilman Johnson.
Thank you, Council President. So first and foremost, I want to acknowledge and recognize and commend Catherine for her leadership under this position, serving as Commissioner of Parks and Rec. We've done great things prior to you assuming the position. I look forward to continuing working with you, moving the 2nd Councilmanic District forward. And also, I'll be remiss if I didn't acknowledge Aparna, my good friend Francesco, and obviously, as Curtis Jones mentioned, the great Frank Faby, who will assist us and make sure that when constituents call us and want to burn us to a stake because something's not taking place or something's not done at a recreation center, I will pick up the phone at any given hour and call my good friend Frank Faby and say, I need help. And so I just want to thank all of you for your hard work and your tenacity in helping us, particularly address the issue of constituent services regarding parks and recreational facilities. I just have 3 brief questions that I want to get into. One, last year, based upon some incidents that took place on the Schuylkill River Trail, I implemented the Schuylkill River Trail Watch in partnership with Town Watch Integrated Services. And so it continues to be a priority of mine because obviously the Schuylkill River Trail is an urban jewel here in the city of Philadelphia. Moving forward, though, in the near future, we're going to do a Schuylkill River Trail task force to bring together all of the stakeholders to begin looking at some call boxes along the Schuylkill River Trail and also cameras. But the reason why we're going to do the task force is because I think this needs to be a priority where the district council person isn't solely responsible for the capital funds that's required. I think this should be an administration level priority because it is a Schuylkill River Trail that's, it involves probably several different council members who are here in this district. And oftentimes when I get calls and the district is split, I will call Council President Clark. We both just put up funds to put up lighting on certain parts of the trail, but nevertheless, from a public safety standpoint, I think we need to take this to the next level and focus. And so I just wanted to put you not on notice, but to let you know that I'll be rolling it out. Also working in partnership with you as being my number 2 as a part of that task force to help guide us through the process, and maybe we can do some public-private partnerships to keep the trail safe as we move forward. I know Councilman Blackwell just celebrated Bartram's Mile the other day, and so we want to continue making sure that trail is safe. My other 2 statements and last question is dirt bike ATVs. Councilman Curtis Jones led hearings with Councilman Reynolds Brown and look at the possibility of us having our own area where young people can go and ride their ATVs. We know it's a difficult process. We know it's not an easy process to find a location, but I still believe that if we do it for the skateboard parks, this is a little more of a delicate situation because you're talking about young people on actual motorcycles, so to speak, and there's a liability issue, but we should still be trying to find a place, an alternative place for young people to get off the streets if we can actually find the parkland. So that's another item I want you to take a look at. And last year we talked about the backlog of the pruning of trees throughout neighborhoods. So I just want to get an idea of where we're at in that process. Currently, what's the target this year for pruning trees throughout the city of Philadelphia? And actually, how much staff do we have dedicated to pruning the trees here in the city of Philadelphia? I just want to say thank you for your time.
So with regards to the status of the tree pruning, this past year we'll have pruned 4,678 trees throughout the city. We do still have a significant backlog, but we're working. For specifically the pruning, I do not. I apologize. I can get that. We have an ongoing list of removals that are targeted. Pruning changes very frequently based on storms and events like that, so we don't have an exact number, but I can get you a good estimate for that.
And can you break it down by district,
Yes.
please?
Mm-hmm.
That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Fiona Sanchez.
Thank you. Thank you, Catherine. I too am very excited to see you at this department and some of the realignments that you've done, and I know that we're going to make tremendous improvements. As we talk about realignment with parks and recreation and the park systems, is there going to be a realignment around rules, around charges and costs? And let me explain. We've had quite a bit of challenges in the past under the previous administration around costs related to the utilization of the parkway and other things. Is all of that information being updated?
In terms of the parkway specifically, that's probably a broader conversation that we're happy to have, including the Managing Director's Office of Special Events as well. Many of the events on the parkway we do in conjunction with the Special Events Office. In terms of our costs for field permitting and things like that, as you know, for young people, there is no cost, and for adults, there is a cost, and that cost changes depending on what asset you're using and what type of field that you're using. And those rates haven't changed since 2011, and we haven't been in discussions to change those rates. We are open to having conversations around, what our special events fees are for public spaces, and do try to make accommodations when we can.
Yeah, and the reason I say this, because it's a conversation that's come up with parades and others as people have post-parade events and the charges associated with. So I think that there's an opportunity there to have a discussion because it's been cost prohibitive. Unlike Councilman Jones, I don't want people coming from other parts of the city in my district to use my fields and bump off my folks. I'm just going to be real clear, right? I spent a whole lot of time getting them fixed. How are we realigning the utilization for schools and others so that community groups do not get bumped off as people get bumped off into other centers? I mean,
Yeah, for school gyms specifically?
Well, no, we're going to get into the gyms discussion. I'm talking about for permitting. So, when folks come from outside the area, how is that handled?
If there is an existing community group who wants to use that field, then that group would have preference. If the field is unused, and would remain unused, right? Then if there is another group from outside that community that wants to use the field, or, you know, perhaps they're being displaced because, as I mentioned before, in their neighborhood, like say they're in near East Fairmount Park and all those fields are being used, right? And we needed to place them somewhere else because we're trying to accommodate that group because there's another group using the field, then we will look throughout our system to identify another location. We would not go, you know, to an existing permit holder and tell them, a youth league, and tell them they're out of luck. We would respect that, but if fields are going unused, then we're certainly open to providing that opportunity to people, no matter where they're from.
And
because
that's
we
a
want-
written protocol, right, that you have internally?
Yes,
Okay.
it's a guideline, correct?
guideline.
Yeah, and so but again, Councilwoman, it's very much, as I said earlier, it's very much a case-by-case basis, and we do our very best with a high level of customer service to try to provide anybody who's looking for space to try to find them space, and we spend a lot of time working with folks, you know, through those situations, and you are right, there are so many of them. It is every day, and especially this time of year, working so hard to try to identify where to put people. And as I mentioned before, as organized youth sports continues to sort of explode in our city.
That's a good thing. I just think that, you know, as, you know, I have not had as much success as some of my colleagues with some of their maintenance issues, but as I fix fields, I don't want my groups displaced.
We
And many
agree.
times, we didn't have groups because we didn't have facilities.
Yep.
And so you're fixing facilities, building leagues, to get to folks from the neighborhood to get displaced. So we, you know, and again, I know that you're always receptive when we do this, but I just want folks to know, I don't want folks coming from
We're
outside.
totally, I completely am clear on where you stand on this. And I do want to say that if there was a situation where there was you know, if you redid a field and there was an existing group from outside of the community that was using that field, but then a new community group from within the community wanted to use that new field, that would be a conversation we would need to have. And we're very open to having that conversation.
Good, and now let's talk about the school agreement. I know you've been working on a new agreement between the school and the recreation partnership, you know, and I've also talked to the school district. Can we have council input in this? I think that, you know, when I fought really hard for this partnership several years ago that led to the financial contribution by the city to the schools, I never realized that we were going to have such an unequitable distribution of school gyms throughout the city. And so what steps are we taking to ensure that we can broaden? It's not about taking away folks, that we can broaden that so that more facilities are open in all parts.
Yes, it really comes down to a budget issue for us, to be completely honest. We, right now, permit 45 schools. So this is the same 45 schools that we've been permitting. We pay the school district $338,000 to permit, or to be able to pay for the overtime that they have to expend so that we can then permit those gyms. It equates to about 5,000 hours of school district overtime. We're actually permitting about 18,000 hours of time in those gyms. I'm sorry, 23,000 hours of time in those gyms. About 5,000 of that is school district overtime. That is where the $338,000 number comes from. That's for 45 gyms. We have requests above and beyond that. I don't have it currently within our budget to increase the number of gyms that we permit, and therefore we have what we have right now. Our MOU with the school district is really just for those same facilities.
Right.
We have not been in conversations with them about additional gyms. You know, that would be a budget conversation.
Well, I think before the school district comes up, I'd like to see what would be an aspirational plan based on requests for use that we've had, and what would be a fair distribution of that, so that if there is a budget ask, we need to ask the school district. Because you're right, we have more and more youth leagues, and they need access to these gyms. I mean, there was you know, we went through this because the school district was in crisis. It's a different time, and I think they need to step up to the plate in a bigger way. And it's hard to know what we're asking if we don't know what the requests are. So I don't know if your team has been keeping a list of what the requests are, and what would that look like? So that we can help advocate.
I'd have to look and see, and we would be grateful if you all have requests, if you could send them to us, even if we can't accommodate them, so that we're aware of what those needs are. I have a sense of football fields, good sense of football fields. I don't have as much of a sense as with gyms, but I'm happy to try to collect that information and work with you on that.
Yep, okay. I'll wait for the next round. Let me just keep in mind that we have community schools, and that those have not all been agreed that they're going to have evening hours, and that's like a low-hanging fruit if we're doing community schools. We should look at those because those were strategically designed based on community partnerships. So I don't know if there's some conversations that need to happen around that.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Blackwell.
Thank you very much. If all of these folks think that they're going to praise Frank Faby and beat me, they can't do it. With his background, there are areas in our district that he remembers even longer than we, like those steps we did at Lee Cultural Center. And but we all appreciate him. And Commissioner, we appreciate you too and your team. Thank you. And the longer you're there, the better, because you get to know all those people. And there's nothing like experience, knowing your people and knowing how you need to treat them. But we are grateful. And Commissioner, I want to apologize. If you talk to the commissioner about me, yes, we did tour each of my rec centers. And yes, when they asked the council cancel due to a nor'easter, I said no. So I apologize for us having to tour in bad weather. I wanted to make sure we got it in before the budget. So we did, and we're grateful. And we are grateful that we are really having a chance to look through our areas, because we bring in the community who are interested, as well as the rec employees, and there's nothing like people being able to, in summers, everybody can't afford to go someplace. And but when people get to use their neighborhood rec centers, it's one of the most important things we do as elected officials. So let me say thank you to everybody concerned, and we're looking forward to great things next year. Next budget time, I promise we won't do it during a nor'easter. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Chair recognizes.
I'm sorry, Mr. President, I forgot one thing.
No
We
problem.
doing okay with the meals for those kids who would
We
otherwise lose
We
meals?
did. We had our a pilot initiative. For those of you who aren't familiar, where during the school district spring break, we distributed some meals at our facilities in the Councilwoman's district, and it did go quite well. I think we had about an 80% rate of use, or I don't know what we're saying, eating of the meals. So we look forward to seeing if we can expand the program in the future, because I think it did go quite well.
Thank you. Yeah,
Yeah.
we want to do a citywide. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good evening to each of you, and Commish, welcome for you and your team. Let me sort of join the choir and thank you, thank Tiffany Thurman, Fabi, Aparna, the whole team. And the reason why we say it is because we want it all done now. We want it done right, effectively, and you all very patient and very responsive.
Thank you.
And I wanted to say that on the record. I think my first budget hearing here with some requests that we have made, maybe the interaction wasn't as smooth, but you've done a good job over the past year. So I want to put that on the record. Let me go back to Councilwoman Quinones Sanchez's line of questioning relative to sort of this inequitable sort of distribution of use as it relates to gyms and fields. The R word comes to mind, and for me is reciprocity, right? Reciprocity. And I want to talk about school district property because, you know, we have Philadelphians who have children who are grown, who are no longer attending public schools, and you know, they too contribute to this tax base. And when they are interested in using a school district-owned facility, but can't access it for one reason or another, it provides a great consternation there. And as taxpayers supporting the district and homeowners, they have a right to have that concern. So I want you to walk me through this, and if you answered any of this before I came in, I apologize for the repetition, but just need it for the record. how many gyms does Parks and Recs actually use after school hours and on the weekends? How many do you know?
This is school district gyms?
Yes.
Yes, 45,
It's a total of 45.
correct.
Now, you gave a dollar amount. How much do you pay to use those gyms?
The cost is at a class 200, and it's $338,000.
You said
and it's been the same amount every year, $338,000.
So 338,000.
And that is for the overtime that we, it's to cover the school district's overtime costs.
School
To
district's
keep those
overtime costs.
facilities open, correct. So it equates to around 5,000 overtime hours. We are actually permitting around 23,000 hours in school district facilities. So we're permitting many hours while the school might still have staff there, right? Between the 6 and 7:30 hour, and then when their staff leaves, we pay for the staff to stay on, and we continue to permit.
Now, how many fields did you tell me you use after school hours and on the weekends?
School district fields?
Yes.
We don't permit school district fields.
So why don't you use school district fields?
It's not part of the MOU.
So it's, okay, so it's not a part of the MOU. Let me ask you this. The school district obviously uses Parks and Rec facilities.
Yes.
Does the school district, now you just told me you paid $338,000 to the school district for the overtime that it costs them for you to use those facilities. Does the school district pay Parks for use of any of your facilities?
No, we don't, the school district, we do have schools using, I'm looking, sorry, we have about 80 schools who have permits.
80 schools?
I think it's around 80, I could be wrong, maybe 75. Sorry, 90 schools, there we go. But but we don't have, we're not actually spending any overtime. So these are schools who are, because our facilities are open, till 9:30. So it doesn't cost us extra to have the schools use our space. But it does, going back to Councilman and Councilwoman's points, it does squeeze us, right? Because because of the, we have, I think, 35 charter schools alone that we're putting in our facilities for evening or weekend use in a Parks and Rec gym, and schools as well, which, squeezes and puts pressure on us to not be able to accommodate perhaps other groups, but we don't have any overtime costs. So it's our straight time, which means that because we have a policy where we don't charge anybody for any youth programs for use of our facilities or our fields, that we don't charge the school district anything.
Now, I'm asking you this with specific sort of concerns in mind relative to what is called super sites in the school district of Philadelphia. And I'm not sure how many the school district has across the city. Someone mentioned the number 4 to me. I know I have one in my district. And this one facility in particular is being used by residents in the area. However, there are challenges with when they can access it along with the Little Leagues. So I'm asking you, because of Parks and Rec's mission, is it at all possible for you to enter into some kind of agreement with the school district so that Parks can assume maintenance of the field, but make those fields readily available? So now, because we have this growing interest by youth-based organizations to use fields, you can add these 4 very well maintained, 4 from what I've heard, one again in my district, you can add them to your catalog of available space, and the burden in terms of the cost, because the Little Leagues, they can, if they win, we want them to do well, but Lord knows when they win and it's time to go to Florida, we're all trying to figure out how do we help to make that happen. And right now we have these facilities, but they can't access them, so they walk right by them, right? And sometimes may see other organizations or school district team sort of practicing or playing on that field, but say, I live here, my parents pay taxes here, and because our practice starts, at 6 o'clock, from 6 to 8, we can't use it. Have you ever engaged in those discussions with the school district?
We've had some discussions around, expanding the facilities that we're able to permit, but again, it comes down to a budget issue.
I will, just for the record, and I've said this to the school district, I will ask them, this will be in my line of questioning, is it at all possible for after-school hours that the school district enters into an agreement where Parks and Recs can add the super sites to your catalog of fields to make them readily available for use by the community, and then you can begin using those to assist some of those community-based organizations that you referenced earlier. So I will put it on the record when we talk with them, but accessibility is extremely important. And I know we're on the next round, I'll come back to hiring. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Chair recognizes Councilman Heenan.
Thank you, Council President and Commissioner and team. I too just want to thank you for all the hard work that you do and the experience that you bring to the kids and the facilities of the city of Philadelphia is just second to none. I do want to use this opportunity to thank you for thinking outside the box, all right, and thinking that, sometimes when city council members are looked upon skeptically at times and, maybe pains in the arches, I'm going to say, that your flexibility in not just saying no, but where do we want to go? How can we better serve our kids in our neighborhoods is what you bring to the table, and I thank you for that. In particular, with trying to make our kids healthy and happy, through 60 minutes of play, Philly Play every year, new programs that really change and adapt to the times and what is necessary. So as you integrate, a lot of the health aspect to what we do as Parks and Rec. So thank you for that. I do want to there's a lot of talk about the permits, and you mentioned 45 schools and the permits and, the overtime, which I get, I understand that, and 5,000 permitted hours, right? Is that correct? Was that hours?
That's hours, and that's the number of hours that we technically the $338,000 pays for to the school district.
So there's
that we're
23
using, correct, of the 45 gyms.
So there could be nights that have permits but no use, and we're not paying for that?
Correct.
Okay, so
Correct. We're paying for what we use.
We're
Correct.
paying for what we use.
Correct. So we keep track of everybody, and we, it's
Well, that's
permit
good. So
team we have.
I
Yeah,
did- right,
who can make sense of this.
I want to
yeah.
clarify that for the record
Yes.
too. So
Yes.
there may be 23,000 hours of permitting, but only 5,000 are being used.
We have about, I hope I have this right, 18,000 hours that we're permitting that we don't pay for necessarily, right?
Do you know, are they being used?
That is use. That is use. That is permits that we have given to organizations to use schools. That is while there is already
But they're covering
a person in the
they're
building.
covering their
Correct.
fees.
Correct.
Okay.
Well, it's already a person in the building that we don't have to pay overtime.
Okay.
It's my understanding.
Okay, great.
have that
Thank
right.
you. I have no questions.
Thank you, Councilman. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Bass.
Thank you again. And just a couple of other questions for you. Something that came to my attention today, road closures. And we had this conversation, it must have been 2 years ago, because I know that it was with Mike D. Berdinas, around road closures when Parks and Recreation has an event and activity. So for example, the Dad Bell Regatta or, something of that sort. When we had the bike race, I know we're not having it this year, but the bike race and things of that nature. Is there a way, it seems like there should be a way that I can get like a text to my phone or dial into a number that will tell me what Parks and Recreation routes are changed, what is closed. have we made any progress on that? And it's been a couple years.
Yeah, and I haven't heard that before. I think it's a great idea, and I'd love to continue that conversation with you and
So
find
nothing
out.
happened with it before?
I know, yeah. You want to come up there? Yeah, I apologize that I'm not familiar
that's
with it.
okay.
I think it's a great idea, and I often find myself, wondering the same information, and I know people who know I'm in this role will text me in the morning and ask me what's closed.
And it would be great if people could just opt into a text that that would push out to them when there's a particular road closures.
It's interesting.
We publish, Councilwoman, every year on April 1st, a list of all the Kelly Drive, Parkway, and Martin Luther King Drive road closures for the upcoming season based on those events. And it tells you exactly how far the road is going to be closed and the hours that it is going to be closed. We do our best with all these events to try and have a Kelly Drive detour in place so it isn't technically fully closed, but more detoured up through East Park. But all of that is published, and we make sure we get it out early in the spring so that people can, plan their year around it.
I appreciate that, but I do know that there's no way I'm going to remember what I've read in the paper in the spring and on July 17th when the streets close, when the road
It's
is
on our
closed.
website that you
Right.
can access anytime.
But is there a
I
way-
understand about the text.
But is there a way that we
opportunity.
can proactively push the information out if someone has that particular interest? So if I know I'm coming into town, I live in the Northwest, I'm coming into Center City, I usually take Kelly Drive, but I got a text this morning that says Kelly Drive is closed because there's a festival going on, or the art museum is closed because it's made in America, or, whatever it may be. Because, I'm not going to remember what was, online or what was in the paper back in the spring. And chances are I'm not going to go to the Parks and Recreation website and look it up. But if we could proactively push it out, I think that would be something that people would appreciate, and particularly people who live near the parks or who travel through the parks on a regular basis.
Yeah, I think it's definitely something that we could look into further and research and figure out where it last went, and also working with the Managing Director's Office for Special Events and see if there's some way that we can collaborate on that.
That'd be
There's
great.
a lot of interest in our department to modernize our special events process overall, and to make it more technologically
Sure.
easier to access information both ways about our special events. So I think it's a great idea, and it's certainly something we'd be happy to talk more about.
Because the other thing that it does is it really cuts down on the number of complaints about events, activities. It's funny to me. I've lived in the city of Philadelphia my entire life, and I'm just so used to activities, in the city and road closures. And I come down every day, and so obviously, over by the art museum, it's closed, and it's a little less convenient to get downtown. But there's public transportation here in Philadelphia. But at the same time, people feel, really caught off guard. For whatever reason, they feel caught off guard. There's a big festival coming, there's an activity coming, and to lessen the number of complaints, concerns, issues, it just might be helpful, that's all.
Great. Thanks, Bev.
One other thing, back in, I think it was 2013, we had done a couple of companion bills, one which required statistics on any criminal activity that took place, working with Parks and Recreation, working with the police department to provide statistics on, what was happening at a particular recreation facility. And, we really haven't, as a member of council, I can say I really haven't received that information. I don't think that my colleagues have either, but it is the law. And I think that most members would like to know if there's a hot spot that they just don't happen to be aware of, and would like to put some additional dollars in. And, we did that bill along with Councilman Clark's bill, which we worked on together, which would, require that extra penalties be added if there's actually a firearm used in the commission of a crime at a City of Philadelphia recreation center or playground. So those are things that we'd like to follow up on and have that information if possible. Again, it helps us allocate our resources more effectively, and we want to be helpful to you and also helpful to our constituents. So if you
Sure,
could
we
give
can
us that.
certainly talk to the police and see if we can collaborate with them to get that information to
That
you
would be great.
and to make it ongoing accessible, yeah.
That'd be great.
Sure.
Okay, I'll come back.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Kiona Sanchez.
Thank you. I want to go back a little bit to our maintenance plan. With all these discussions around rebuild and the internal maintenance team, do we have kind of a facility to by facility maintenance work order, what are the things that we need to repair, or is that in the works? Because you guys gave round numbers, but we've never gotten detailed. This roof absolutely must get done. This.
Okay, so we have, it's about 1.5 years old now, it's a work order management system called Performo, whereby staff at any level can enter a work order request in. So site staff, for example, a rec leader on site, could put in a request to have something addressed in their facility. It could be as simple as changing a light bulb, it could be ceilings, roof, anything. And those are tracked on an annual basis. So they get entered, and someone actually has to go in to say that they're complete and who has actually performed the work. So that exists. It's, again, been a pilot, so it's about 1.5 years old, but we do have that in place.
So I would be able to get, again, because one of the things that I want to look at is, we've, again, in council, have invested a lot in the internal maintenance and building up the building trades folks internally. So it's sort of like, are we addressing the top priorities in a facility to facility basis so that it could better inform us about the order in which things need to get fixed? I mean, are we there? Are we working towards getting there?
I have to say, I think we're working towards getting there. Again, we only have about 1.5 years of data, so we're capturing recent requests. We can assess that currently based on the highest priority or needs. And within that system, we do have the ability, for example, if something is severe and needs to be addressed by a capital squad, so it's beyond a simple maintenance request, that it does need to turn into a capital project, it does get moved forward, and then that's when we would approach your office for assistance.
Yeah. I'd like to get an update of our facilities
Certainly.
plan by
Sure.
plan. Clearly, I keep getting asked around rebuild, what is my priority, and as I keep telling you, my priority is my backlog, so I don't know why I keep getting asked for a list, because there's only one list. So, but I want to look at that because
Sure.
there might be something in that may better inform what should be moved up.
Certainly. We can get you them.
So I would appreciate that. Who sets the regulations about the tree trimming, particularly the ones that PICO does along its lines?
Do you have that? Pico, I'm not.
What's the question again?
So PICO, where they have their electrical lines,
Yeah.
does some trimming, very badly,
Yes.
by the way,
Yes, they do.
and very ugly. And so who regulates that?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we don't regulate their tree trimming. We've voiced our complaints in certain instances with them and other utilities when they work on trees
Give
in
the
the
trees
public
the strange
domain.
The
haircuts.
one,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, half the tree is lopped off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, so we
Strange.
do share some frustration there. Unfortunately, we don't regulate their crews.
Do they tell us when they're going to go out and do this so we can better coordinate?
Sometimes they give us advance notice, not always, though.
Okay. I've complained to them about it. At some point, they got to do it better. I go to certain neighborhoods and they look really nice and cut. And
Yes.
then you go on Wyoming Avenue, you go on Castor Avenue, you go and it's not acceptable. But they are telling me they're only required to keep it away from their line.
For
So we-
safety reasons.
Right, for safety reasons.
Yeah.
So we need to figure something out because it's not consistent, in all of the areas. And I know we're planting better trees, so we don't have the problem that we have.
Yes.
A few years ago, we had a discussion in this room, and there was a discussion about the removal of all the dead trees. It'd be nice to get an update. How many dead trees do we have? Do we have enough money in our capital budget?
So we had done an inventory last year when we were here at budget. We had embarked upon the cyclomedia process and to ascertain how many dead trees we had across the city, dead or hazardous. We have a total of about 1,400 trees for a total cost of a little over $1 million to address at a point in time. Trees continue to die, but as of the end of 2016, it was about 1,400 trees that needed to be addressed very quickly. We do not have enough funding in our capital budget to address that.
I will say that we have now broken up those dead trees by council district, and we are going to council district person to council district person to let them know how many dead or dying trees are in their district, and offering them the unique opportunity to pay for both the removal of those trees and the replanting of new trees. And I will say that of the 3 people that we have approached so far, all 3 have said that they are very anxious to support that effort. So as we come around to the rest of the 7, we hope that we will get similar responses, because we would very much like to wipe them all out in the next 6 months. Now, there will always be dead trees, and trees will always be dying, but that's one way that we have found through this cyclomedia project. We know where the dead trees are, which is it's a big deal, and we're very excited about that. And so now we just have to figure out how to.
Yeah, just quickly as it relates to that, and again, I know we're planting better trees, but in the newer parts of my district, and Councilman Heenan probably knows this well because he represented it, there's blocks and blocks where these sycamore trees have totally uplifted all of the sidewalks.
Yes.
Can anybody here has any institutional memory of what we did with those trees? Because my concern is, while I know we say it's the responsibility of the owner, we planted them, and now we've limited, handicap accessibility to them. They're very costly because they're huge. Like, what did we do at one point around those trees?
Meaning, why did we plant them, or what did we?
Well, I don't know. That person's not around, thank God, because I'd have shot them myself.
Yeah. Again, if they're street trees, then it is something that we can. If they're dead or dying, it is something.
They're not dead.
If they're not dead or dying, and they look terrible, and they're breaking up the concrete, like outside of my mom's house. You're right. It's a concern, and it's a concern that we have in communities when people don't want us to plant new trees because they assume that's going to happen again.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I said this, just to give you an example, I said this to someone, the old man lived on 6th and Butler, and I kept telling him we can't take it until it's dead, and then he put gas in it until it became dead, and then the wind came and it took it down, and I don't want to encourage other people to do that, but at the same time, it's pretty bad. I think Councilman Heenan,
it's like a tree.
We did a tour of that area the other day with my staff, and it's very cost prohibitive for those working class folks to address those. And many of them bought the house when the tree was there. Yep. All right, my time is up.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Yeah, Councilwoman, we have a bunch of them over in our area. Actually, goes way back. Tell you how long I've been working in government, when the city used to do curbs and sidewalks under the old program. And they planted all these trees, and people were kind of excited. And now those, back then, new curbs and sidewalks are now broken up. You can't walk down the sidewalk, and the city's basically said, that's your responsibility, it's your tree, although they gave the trees to the people. So I know exactly what you're talking about. Real problematic. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I asked this question yesterday of HR, and it's something that has been of great concern. Wanted to know, has Parks and Rec thought about using the racial equity tool in the hiring practices, and are there any proposed solutions in working with Civil Service Commission and HR? And I'm specifically referring to those folks who are hired for our summer jobs, our part-time jobs, and they are overwhelmingly people of color. And however, of those part-time workers, the folks who actually end up becoming full-time civil servants are overwhelmingly white. And for me, there is some kind of breakdown. So we're doing it right from a seasonal perspective, and it's reflecting Philadelphia's population. But when it comes time for the actual grown-up, pay the mortgage and bills, career, there's something happens. Talk to us about the racial equity tool and communications with HR and whether or not there's a way we can make it through that.
Sure. Unfortunately, I can't speak as much to the racial equity tool. I know there's a plan being developed, and we have spoken with Nolan's group and also and other folks who are working on that plan through the racial equity grant. And you know, we have given them a lot of information and data about the challenges that we have in our department and how you know, being a part of that, you know, being able to implement part of what comes out of that plan in our department would be incredibly beneficial, because we have struggled with exactly what you've said. We have 1,400 seasonal employees. We have 700 full-time staff. And now, I will say that not all the 1,400 seasonal employees want full-time jobs, but there is a good portion who do. And you know, we really do want to create pathways for those individuals to come into our department full-time or another city department full-time. It doesn't necessarily have to be with us. And so there's a couple of things that we're doing. The first thing that I mentioned in my opening remarks is our career advancement project, and that's a small program, but I hope that it will become a model and also a scalable initiative that we can continue to build over the next few years. And that is an initiative where we're going to have 40 individuals that are hopefully coming from, we're going to target our seasonal employees to join this program that we will be starting in June. And it will be a 24-month program for individuals to be paid $11 an hour to work with us in 3 different tracks. And then from that, they will be in line for a civil service position. And we are targeting individuals who are in our existing seasonal workforce who have, you know, expressed an interest in full-time employment and would benefit from this program. It will be 4 days of work and then 1 day of training. And you know, we have had other workforce development programs, but I would say this one we're doing with a higher level of intentionality, and also it's longer. It's 24 months. And what we have found is the 6 and 9 month positions that we can currently offer, it's just not enough for folks, right? So that's one thing that we're doing. Another thing that we're doing is working closely with OHR to actively recruit for positions. I mean, to be honest, you know, we probably haven't done as much to actively recruit employees for our department as we could. And you know, I come from the nonprofit world, right, where, you know, I was the fundraiser, but everybody who worked in my organization was a fundraiser, from the accountant to the person who answered the phones. And when I first got to the department, it was, you know, we sort of had there was a bit of a mentality that we had an HR problem, and I said, well, this is we're all recruiters, right? And so we are really working hard as a department now with OHR and our internal HR division to recruit from our seasonal workforce and to make sure that our seasonal workforce is aware of the opportunities that exist, not just in our department, but citywide. And so
let me interject right there, because I think the level of intention associated with the activity is something that was probably missing in the past. So I appreciate you referencing the new program, the 40 participants. Obviously, we read that in the testimony, but I also appreciated your comments relative to trying to scale it. Because there are a lot of people who have been sort of seasonal workers for years. And while you're right, many of them don't always want full-time employment, but many of them do. And they have talked about those barriers to entry. So that's a sort of barrier to entry, a concern. We'll see what happens with that program. Let's talk about barriers to promotion. Sure. I did also, just for the record, I mentioned to HR yesterday, told them about a national experience where people looked at Philadelphia, that terrible rule of 2, and mentioned my Councilwoman Blondell Reynolds Brown, who has been working on that issue, and they talked about, why don't you have a rule of 5? Why don't you have a rule of 10? Tell us about barriers to promotion. And we had an issue at one of our local rec centers with someone who was very knowledgeable there. But because of that very limited rule, we were not able to expand the universe to such a degree that we could sort of pull in the interest of the people who were there advocating strongly just based on the rules. What would the rule of 5? If the rule of 5 was in existence, what would it allow you to do relative to diversity at Parks and Recs?
Well, you know, I'd love a rule of 10, but I'll take 5. You know, it would help us. It would help us. It is challenging. I'm new to civil service, so I have a very visceral, sort of experience with this, and, it is challenging when you, have a list of eligible candidates, and you see that there is real diversity on the list, and you see that some of those individuals have been working for your department for a long time, and if you had the ability just to pick them off that list and employ them full-time, you would in a heartbeat. But the truth is that you won't get to them before that list expires. And then they have to go through the whole process again. And I'd be disingenuous if I didn't say I wasn't challenged by it. It has forced me to sort of think about how we better recruit candidates, because the more candidates we get on that list, the better our chances will be to hire, to be able to hire the best candidates. And so through our recreation leader trainee test, when we, knew that position was coming up, we did a huge effort to try to recruit from our seasonal workforce eligible, diverse candidates for the rec leader trainee position. And I'm happy to say that the eligibility list is 50% higher in terms of people of color than it was 2 years ago, the last time that list was available. So it worked, and it was just information sessions at rec centers where we told people about the job and said, we really want you to work at Parks and Rec.
And just for the record, if anyone complained about the number of people who responded, that was a good problem to have, okay, when you have an overwhelming response to information that you distribute to the community. And Council President, I know my time is up, but I also have to ask, have you and will you sort of look at from hiring to promotion, and now I'm talking about for the regional, sort of making it to the regional leader level, are there any antiquated, outdated eligibility requirements, sort of on the record that you say to yourself, look, I've only been here for a year, but I want you to tell me why in order to be sort of a regional director, you have to do X, Y, and Z. Have we taken a look at that? Parks and Recs working with HR?
Not yet. We need to. We probably need to look at all of our specs for our jobs, both entry level and promotional, and think about if they're still relevant for both the individuals who are within the department, the individuals that we want to attract for appointment, and the individuals that we want to serve.
Is there anything?
And that's a huge job.
Is there anything that comes to the top of your mind when you think about something, for example, that could be changed?
Sure. Rec leader trainee test, that you need a degree in dance or theater or something, and yet, we will knock people out if they have a degree in exercise science or something like that. So, yes, someone might be working with our department, have a degree in history, working with our department, for a year, but won't be eligible, but a new graduate who just came out with a degree in dance will be eligible. So again, those are things that working through with OHR to change the specs of these positions. I'm sure that when that spec for that position was created, that, a rec leader might have been different, right? Or the needs of the community might have been different. So it has become very clear to me over the last year in this position that part of the work has to be to go back and look at those specs and see how we can make those specs more relevant for today's constituents.
Thank you. And thank you, Mr. President, for the flexibility.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Sanchez.
I'm going to let Catherine leave because I know her team works really hard. But I just wanted to echo what the Councilwoman Parker has mentioned, and we've had the conversation before. Particularly diverse candidates who have bachelor's degrees and some of these other requirements, they have other options, and so really readdressing that. I mean, I think the police department proved it when they went to 60 credits. African American and Latinos who have college credits have other options, and so they don't necessarily explore that. So I really am grateful that you're exploring that. Last thing, because we were talking about it earlier, and then I kind of moved away from it. If you could submit to the chair a breakdown of all the recreational staff, services, and equipment, particularly overtime, that is used for citywide special events. I think it's important that we begin to break down your budget. I know that the rec department staff does a bunch of different things, and we've worked really hard to increase your budget, but I think we need to start parceling this out, not because we don't want to do it. In fact, I'm very pleased that this mayor has been more open to more activities and more community-based activities, but it would be nice to have a separate rundown on that.
Happy to get that to you.
Because I think your staff is everywhere. all the
We
time.
feel that way sometimes, but we're happy to get that to you.
And we
Absolutely.
want to give you separate credit for that than some of the stuff that's going on in the different neighborhoods and rec centers. And I don't think most of us realize how involved your department is on all these other things. And then just for follow-up, really want to readdress the issue of when we use the parkway and those kinds of charges. I'm open to look at what you have and some suggestions. And again, none of this has been stuff that the mayor's folks haven't been open to looking at and readdressing. I'm also cognizant of nonprofits versus profit folks who have activities there, and even some of the bigger nonprofits who have bigger budgets. And so, you can't, it's not an apples to apples kind of situation.
So what was the?
So the issue of the cost of using the parkway and those types of fees, when there's corporate sponsorship, it triggers another fee. I know Mr. Bessler is very well aware of all of this. We've been having the conversation
Wrote the book.
since I was like 18 years old.
And he was much older then.
You've been around a long time, but obviously with the realignment,
Yeah.
I know that we've done all the realignment at the neighborhood level, but the downtown level is one that we
Yeah,
should
we're
talk
happy
about.
to look at that and continue that conversation.
So I can let you guys go home because I'm done. Yeah,
Thank you, Councilwoman.
we like Catherine too much and her team too much.
I know. Give her a year though. Yeah. I know she can be tough. Over a period of time, you get a little softened up. But it's all good. It's all good. It's all good. No, we love you, Catherine, and all of you. Recreation is one of our better departments, and we really appreciate what you guys do for us. Thank you so much, and thank you for your testimony. Have a good day.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
The committee will stand in recess until Tuesday, May 2nd, 2017, 10 a.m., at which time we will reconvene in room 400 City Hall.
I was thinking that the whole time. It's a beautiful bird. We have our new beautiful bird.
Hey, happy hour. Frank's already beautiful.
He's a beautiful bird.